Well, Mama was a nice lady. She had a lot of friends, a lot of visitors come by and they'd stop. They'd talk a while, and then they'd go on about their whatever they was doing. And she treated all of us about the same way. She didn't show no partiality among none of her children. She had 7, and we had a pretty good life, Bob.
Tell me about that.
Well, we always had to go to church on Sunday in Sunday school, and she was pretty well known down in the church circles, and she could made most of the kids' clothes. She spent a lot of time sewing, make the girls' dresses and our shirts and different things that she could make. She didn't make pants or nothing, but she did make shirts and a few other things. And she was a real nice lady. I miss her a lot.
How did she make ends meet?
Well, she planned her everything ahead of time. If she was going to have certain things for dinner, we knew about it the day before then. And we had plenty to eat, but we couldn't waste nothing. She didn't take out a whole bunch of stuff and eat a bite or two of it and push it back. If you took it out, you eat it. She always cooked something that she knowed my daddy liked. She didn't test him on nothing like food and all, see if he liked it. She knew before she cooked it, he liked it. Otherwise, she wouldn't have cooked it. And we had plenty to eat too. Raised most of the stuff we eat.
Like what? What did you raise?
Well, then the vegetables, we raised all of them. We didn't buy no vegetables. Okra, green beans, cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all that stuff. We raised it. And she canned a lot of stuff for the winter. Peaches and apples, butter beans, peas, green beans, all that stuff she could can. Usually can put stuff in the quart fruit jars. And she was pretty good about managing everything.
Did you have meat on the table every day?
Just about every day we had meat, sure did.
What'd you have?
Well, we had a lot of wild game. We hunted a lot. Daddy hunted, killed rabbits and squirrels and quail and dove and you name it. If it was a game bird, he killed it.
Was there anything she would not cook?
No. She'd cook about everything. Now, there's some things she wouldn't dress. She wouldn't dress wild game. The only thing she'd dress herself was chicken. She didn't mind cutting up a chicken. picking the feathers off of it, cutting it up, batter and fry it. She cooked it several different ways.
Well, did you ever have possum?
Yeah, yeah. My dad loved possum, and she knew how to fix it, but she wouldn't have nothing to do with cleaning it. Nothing. When it was brought in the house, it had to be ready to put on the stove. And the stoves were a lot different them days. And she had these big old wood stoves that had a reservoir on one end that held about 15 gallons of water. So we had plenty of hot water. Had what she needed to cook with, and she was a good cook.
Well, tell me about your daddy.
Daddy was an easygoing type of fellow. He didn't fly off the handle, get mad, and do a lot of bad talk and all. That wasn't him. He was always kind to everybody. And everybody liked Wilbur Daniel. That was his name.
Now, what did he do?
He usually was hauling things for people. He had a truck, and he'd haul a lot of fertilizer from Atlanta and Roanoke and 2 or 3 Anniston, 2 or 3 different towns he hauled fertilizer from. Have to unload it and put it where they wanted it.
What about the bus? Didn't he drive a bus?
Yeah, he ran a school bus. Back in those days, the counties didn't own the school routes. The individuals owned them. He didn't always drive that bus, so a lot of times he'd let somebody he knew could depend on. He wouldn't let just anybody drive it. He'd let Ernest Calhoun drive it, and a few more. Horace, my brother, twin brother, he drove it a lot, but he never would let me drive. He was afraid I'd turn it over and hurt somebody.
Were you a wild driver?
Well, I didn't understand the danger of unsafe driving. I'd want to see how fast something would go.
So did you ever try to see how fast his bus would go?
And he'd say, slow that thing down. He did too.
Now, was he sort of a quiet fella?
Yeah, he didn't make a lot of noise. He was pretty quiet.
Well, that's kind of the opposite of your mama, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Mama would, she'd let herself be heard and known.
Now, you lived close to your grandfather, didn't you?
Yeah, we lived just a little ways from one another. Always had.
How did that work out?
Oh, he and my mom didn't get along. He didn't like her people, and they were good people. Finchers were good folks, well-known people, but there's something my granddad didn't like about them.
What do you think that was?
I don't know. Never did know. But he'd always say, that's just like Robert Fincher. Something that wasn't exactly right. He said, Robert Fincher must have done that.
You were talking about that your mother didn't get along with your granddaddy.
That's right.
And why he didn't like her family.
That's absolutely true. They didn't get along at all. She never did like the idea of living close to him. She wanted a place that she could call hers or theirs. hours. She didn't want nothing to do that my granddaddy was involved in. And he was a good carpenter. Built a lot of houses down that part of the country, and they're still there. Some of them looked as good as they did when they built them. It didn't matter how good they looked. Mama didn't like them.
Now, what about your grandmother? Did she get along with your grandmother?
Yeah, her and Marlena got along good. I say Marlena, that was our step grandmother. We never did know our grandmother. She died before we got big enough to remember. But from what they said, they were real good friends. Got along real good together. But I can't remember her.
Tell me about your grandpa Fincher.
Yeah, he was a pretty good fella. I like Grandpa. He liked to have something better than his brother Tom. They raised their own pork, and they bragged on how big their pork was, their hogs. And Grandpa told one time, said Robert come up asked his brother, and Robert told him down at the store, said, I went to help Robert kill hogs today and get the meat cured. But said just before we got ready to go to start work, a darn cat grabbed one of them hogs and ran out of the house with it, and we never did see it no more. You know, that wasn't so, but everybody laughed. They used to drive cattle. They bought a lot of cattle during the off seasons when there wasn't much of a market for them. They bought a lot of them and pastured them and got them prepared for the market. And they'd have, I guess, amongst for 3 or 4 of the men in that community, they'd have around 100 head of cattle. And they'd put them in the road and drive them from Randolph County, Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia. And they carried them to Brady Avenue. And they had a meat processing place over there on Howell Mill Road. And that's where all of them went to.
How long would it take them to drive the cattle from Randolph County to Howell Mill Road?
It'd take them a long time. They didn't do it in just 2 or 3 days. They done it in weeks. They'd be gone 2 and 3 weeks at a time. They steal some graves down between Carrollton and Randolph. They steal some graves down there that didn't nobody know who they was. Robert, my twin brother, he found out a little more about it. The man told him that what those unknown graves were. A lot of them was got sick and died on the way to Atlanta driving cattle, and they just had a little service, graveside service, and buried them, and that's the end of it. That's one way he had of making money. My granddad Daniel, one we called Pap, he never fooled with us like that. All he fooled with was building something. He could build most anything he took a notion to. And his daddy, we called him Grandpa Cuddy. Pap and Cuddy, they worked good together, and they could do a lot of good work too.
Well, we'll talk about him the next time.